Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda. Happy Monday. I hope you are all doing well, enjoying Gemini season. Um, as speaking of Gemini season, if you want to access readings on the app for the collective or also readings by sign, you can download the Energetic Alchemist app. There's also Reiki tools there, other tools to help you with your energetic alchemy. And there is something else I'm about to start publishing on the app. So stay tuned for that. But today we are having a beautiful conversation with a woman named Paget Kagy. And she is a frequency healer and quantum coach who helps her clients release their deepest energetic blocks so they can unlock their unique purpose and path to their most aligned life. So Paget and I get into deep conversation around what that even means. What are the impacts and effects of energy blocks within our day-to-day lives? What causes them? And she also gives some tips of how to work and move through them. So I am very excited for you to hear this conversation. We had an incredible time together. And you want to make sure to follow Paget. You can learn more about her and her work by going to her website, thequantum.life. You can also follow her on Instagram, which you will find on her website at thequantum.life. Her Instagram is at Paget, Paget Kagy. That's Kagy. She also has an Unlocking Codes of Abundance course that is coming up. So you will hear more about that as well. You can learn more about that at abundanceclearings.com. I am so excited for you to hear this conversation. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and it's just, I think, a lot of good food for thought. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Paget, and I will see you on the other side. Hey, everyone, we are here today with the beautiful Paget Kagy. Almost said it wrong. Beautiful Paget Kagy. And I was telling you beforehand, excited to have this conversation because these topics are huge for us and just our daily life. But before we get into it, I just want to thank you for taking time to have the conversation today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Yolanda.
Yeah, no, of course. I love, love, love hearing people's stories. And of course, it's like such an honor that we get to learn from each other as well. But before we get into the conversation, just want to point out you are an actress, a writer, and also an empowerment coach. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of it all, just curious how you got into this path of being concerned with energy blocks and manifestation.
Yeah, of course. So it started with me, thinking my path was in the entertainment industry with acting. And I don't think it was, of course, it wasn't an accident, but it was one of those things where I went into it wanting to be an actor, like that whole thing, that whole cliche thing of like, I want to be an actor and, make a living just doing my art and everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem that I didn't realize that I was having is all this time that I was really struggling, it was because I was approaching and I was wanting to be an actor from a place of low self-worth, like
Mhm.
from a place of like, I need some sort of external validation because when I was younger, I used to be bullied, picked on, and everything like that, where I didn't feel worthy in the eyes of others. So there was a part of me, yes, I absolutely love the craft, but there was a part of me that was really needing this validation to fill a hole that I think I had like my whole life, which was like, why am I a weirdo? Why don't I fit in? And all of that. And of course, it came to like everything just came crashing down on me. This was like 10 years ago where nothing was working in my life. I was single, I was broke, I didn't know how to make any, I wasn't booking anything. I didn't know how to make basically anything work in my life. And I think that's kind of where we all start on our
Yeah.
spiritual journey is like something's not working and I'm not figuring it out with my head and I'm not figuring it out with like these normal typical strategies of like just working harder, just doing more and thinking positively. It wasn't working for me. And so I went on this very long journey of like trying all of the different things. And then I turned to spirituality because those other things weren't quite working. And then I was trying manifestation, which was cool for a while, but I kept on hitting a wall where I kept on feeling like, why isn't this moving to the next level? Like, why isn't my life really seriously improving? Why am I not living to the potential that, when we're kids, we're like, wait, I have so much potential. I want to do this. Like, I want to be big and shine and like do all these things. And I just didn't know how to break that ceiling for myself. And it wasn't until really like 2022 when I started to understand, oh, wait, like, hold on, that version of me when I was little, that is who we are, right?
Mhm.
That is that potential. That is who we are. It's us being connected with the true nature of us over time and through generational curses is what I call it, past lives, all these different energies that we take on. It clouds our essence. It clouds that potential. And then we just operate out of these programs and what I call energy blocks that make us think that we aren't that potential anymore. And I started to release my patterns and see the resistance in me that I was bumping up against at a deeper energetic level. And as I was releasing more and more of these like patterns and these energies that were just clouding me, I was able to come into a space where it's like everything just seemed to fall into place in my life like very quickly all at
Right.
once. Like everything all at once. And I'm like, what is happening? Because here's the thing, like when we get out of our way, when we release the stuff that is stuck in us, like we naturally have a compass to like lead us to our path. We naturally have that compass that's going to take us to the life that we were always meant for. So that's kind of, basically how I got into this whole process. And it just changed the way I looked at life, myself, and then also even acting. Like all of a sudden, I realized, oh, acting played a role in me getting here, but that's not necessarily like my full vision of self.
I was going to ask you about that, before we get into the work with the blocks and all of this. With what you said, just curious if even though you realized why you were motivated to go down that path, right? One, was it shocking to the system to realize what the true motivation was? And even though it may not have been what you really wanted or needed, bigger picture, did it help you in some way to go
Of
down that
course.
path? Okay, yes.
Yeah, no, it's so right. Like none of this happens by accident.
Right.
Like none of these things, like none of these like little turns that we make that we go, oh, that was such a bad choice. No, it all, you might not see it yet, but it all is playing a role in the bigger picture because with the acting, it made me realize a lot of things about myself. It made me very self aware, right? Because you have to
Mm,
film yourself a lot and you have to see yourself a lot. It made me very self aware, and then also, it was important because it actually played a role in my what I call a quantum jump in my life. So I was posting these little skits online, actually on Instagram, really just to have fun and showcase my acting. And I was creating these little skits between like a person and the universe. And it was actually one of those things that ended up going viral that actually led me to doing what I do now, which was a complete like left turn. But I
right.
mean, how I don't know. Like maybe I would have come here anyway, but come to this place anyway. But I'm like, that obviously played a very critical role in like my path right now. But
Yeah.
yes, when I first discovered, oh, why are you motivated to do this? Yeah, I cried. I had a full down breakdown in front of my husband. I was like, it was like a little girl version of me that was just crying and breaking down, being like, oh my God, like, because you have to go through the ugly before you can get to the other side. And
Right.
my ugly was resolving that like version of me that felt so bad about herself and felt so like worthless in a way, right? Because of the way I was treated when I was younger and all of that stuff. I had to resolve that younger version of me.
It's
So
so
it's hard.
interesting too what you think about when you say, so you had these videos called Conversations with the Universe. And I want to ask you what those conversations were about. But it's interesting how a lot of times when we get out of our head of what we think we're supposed to do or just what we have to do, and you go at that natural inclination, and then look how that shifted you in a phenomenal way. So what did initiate that? Where were you sitting down and talking about in these conversations with the universe? And were they just for you and you were sharing, or did you hope to help other people with your conversations?
No, no, they were I had been posting for a while. I'm kind of a silly person. I had been posting for a while and it was really just for me to exercise just being seen, like
Right.
just putting myself out there because I knew it was one of my challenges was being seen and like, hey, if you want to be an actor, like you got to be seen. So I was really just using the platform as a way to get more comfortable just being seen and process through that block of being seen. And the universe idea, it just came to me as just a funny, silly little idea I couldn't get out of my head. And that's when like it's something that, okay, I don't know why I'm meant to do this for, and who knows what the outcome is, but I'm meant to explore this. And I couldn't get out of my head because it was basically just me talking to myself, which I had been doing already, for the past however many months and trying to figure out what is wrong with me. Like, why is my life not changing?
Right.
And then I just basically put it into a skit form where I just called my higher self the universe and I called myself, right? Which was the person asking all of these desperate questions around manifestation. Um, yeah, I don't, was that, I forgot what the
Yeah,
question was.
no,
I'm sorry.
no, that totally answers it. But were you getting unexpected downloads in the moment when you were recording and asking yourself the questions?
You know what? That's such a good question because when I had that universe real download, it was a download.
Yeah.
Like I don't, yes, of course, it was me thinking about what to script and what to write, but it was that weird thing where you're breaking the fourth wall kind of a
Right.
thing where you're talking to yourself while you're scripting it. And then even as you're acting it out, I'm like talking to myself and I'm like pretending like literally when I even film, let's say like the universe aspect, like the universe side of the skit. I sometimes like have this really trippy moment where I'm pretending to look directly at me. And I'm
Wow.
like, oh my gosh, this is a message I need to hear right now. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm filming this right now. So it is
Yeah.
really cool.
That is wild. Okay. So, I mean, but it makes all the sense in the world. It's just fascinating always to hear when people follow these inspirations that they don't understand in the
No,
moment and then
yeah.
it just ends up being so beautiful. But on the other side of the coin, we do tend to have lots of dreams and visions and aspirations, goals, all of these things. And for some reason, some things are easy. Like we can check off the list, check the box, get it done. But then we do have things that we have more resistance around. Even though we say we want it, it seems like some weird invisible barrier or just we can't figure it out. And it sounds like
Mhm.
that was part of what you went through. So I wanted to ask you first, with the work that you've been doing and with interacting with people, what are some common blocks or like those invisible barriers you've noticed?
Yeah, definitely. So low self-worth, which is obviously in everybody, like
Yeah.
we all have some degree of low self-worth. It's just a matter of how much is it really creating resistance to you getting what you want. But for instance, low self-worth, if it comes to relationships or money. So it's this whole energetic thing. I don't know how else to say it, right? Paradigm where you at a deeper level, it's not even your subconscious mind. It's like energetically, like I can see it, where you are placing yourself like below the thing that you want,
Mm,
right? And it's like you think the thing that you want is more important or more valuable than you, which obviously in relationship, then you are less valuable. But then, so that's the low self worth. So the way I would see it, this is me specifically, is like as you actually just release the low self worth that's covering up your true self worth, which is deserving of everything, you just naturally start to inch your way up so that you have more energetic, what I call leverage to go, oh yeah, that thing, that money, or that person, or that love, or that relationship. Oh, it doesn't seem so out of the field for me,
right.
right? It's like, oh, I can claim that. Oh, I do deserve that. Right. And you can state it without trying to like fool yourself. You can just state it because you're like, yeah, of course I'm worthy of that because I'm just embodying my natural worthiness. And that's why I say blocks because we're already worthy. Like we're already brilliant. We already know what our gifts are. We already know how to create abundance. We already know how to really connect with that love within us. It's just a matter of like what's standing in the way of that. So that's one of them. And that's obviously a big one because if you don't fundamentally embody that worthiness of the thing you want, it's very hard to maintain it. It's very hard to attract it. And it's very hard to hold it in the proper way that actually enhances you. Because what happens also, and I see this too, where let's say someone does manage to just get like a certain amount of money, but it's from a place of low self-worth. It doesn't really last. Like they can't really hold on to it because again, like their low self-worth actually gets magnified the more money they would have because it's born from the place of low self-worth. So whatever is born from the place of low self-worth, right, is just going to end up magnifying the low self-worth the more and more you get. It's a really weird equation that happens
Yeah.
with that. The other pattern that I think, especially for women, so I'm including myself in this, oh my gosh, it really, really hurts us from being able to, whether it's manifesting or living our potential, it's burden,
Mm.
where we don't even realize we're doing it, but we are just taking on the burden of everything and everyone around us. And I mean, I've seen this in myself. So let's say you want to create more wealth, but you run the pattern of burden. The more wealth you would try to create, the more burden you would feel by it, like
Yeah.
the more heavy it would feel. So you actually, in a way, your higher self would be like, let's not create more wealth because it's going to destroy you, because you're going to feel like you have 2 tons like on your back. Or relationships even, right? Like we just end up just taking on the burden of the people around us and we don't even realize it. We just think that that's our role because that's how we've always operated. But obviously it's not supposed to be that way, but we feel like that's the only way in order for us to justify our worthiness on some
Right.
level. And then also another one is guilt, right? Which is just like
Yeah.
embedded in our consciousness and our society. Everything's around guilt. It's a really effective control mechanism actually, but where we somehow just feel like bad for being more or having more or wanting more. Like we need to be super just grateful. Being grateful is great, but being grateful to like convince yourself that you shouldn't want more, not so good. So those are like the three really big ones.
Those are huge. But so I'm curious about this because I would love for you to kind of break this down for us in a way, because I get the whole energetic thing. Like, even I saw the visual when you said, like, if you feel like, say, all the money is above you or beyond you, and how do you come to match that in frequency? But then another part of what you're sharing, it also highlights the potential stories that we have. So, is there kind of this dance between the stories and then what is the actual frequency of the story? It sounds like a combination.
Totally. Yes, 100%. It's a really good way that you put it, because some people say, oh, it's just the subconscious or it's just the mindset. Oh, it's
Mm.
just that it is a dance. It is a dance because so the way that I see it, right? And so this is from my perspective and the work that I do, is that I is that you have to raise your level of frequency, consciousness, energy, vibration, whatever you want to call it, okay, to get to a higher perspective beyond the pattern. And
Right.
once you actually raise your level of consciousness or frequency, you have energetic leverage to see the patterns you're running, right? Even at a conscious level, but really importantly at a deeper energetic level. And then you have the ability to be able to release the patterns. Okay. But then what happens is some of us are so ingrained in our habits of the way we operate. So if
Mhm.
some of us are super ingrained in like all the stories, right, and all of the like mindset stuff and all of the physical behaviors, then yes, like you also do need to address the behavior, because if you're so programmed on a physical level to do a certain thing, right? If we release it on a deeper level, then that program, it's going to be easier for you to break the program, obviously. But if you're not conscious of it, you can still like continue to try to run the program, right?
Right.
And you'll still block yourself on some level.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. And I was going to ask you about that, like the approach to releasing, but it's something you just said, and it came up in your story as well. Like that one part of even being able to just acknowledge it for ourselves. Because I imagine some people may have resistance and even admitting or acknowledging
Totally.
what their story is, or,
Totally.
have denial around,
Of
that's
course.
not me. That's not my story. So what is your approach to this? Or like, what are some, some suggestions you may have of just how to approach, how to start the process of release?
Yeah, good question. I think, so I use a combination of the frequency work, which helps you elevate your level of frequency so you automatically start releasing programs, but then I also use shadow work too, so that people are forced to like mentally see it as well. It's
Right.
easier when you are able to energetically release it and then you mentally, that's usually how it works. You energetically start releasing something. So that's actually how it works a lot of the times, is that people go to a higher level of consciousness. They start releasing the pattern without realizing it. And then it hits them and their mind and they go, oh my God, right? It's that aha, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been doing that this whole time. Whereas
Right.
a week ago, they'd be like, no, I don't do that. I don't think it's a problem. No, it's just a conscious choice. I just like helping people all the time and giving myself away. No, it's just a conscious choice. No, I like it. Right. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, they like start to release the pattern of, let's say, the burden, guilt, or whatever. And then they start going, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've been doing this. And it really upsets them. And then they're kind of put in the position where they have no choice but to change.
Right. Yeah.
You're
And I
right.
have to ask you this too, because I imagine, you know, we could think, let's say, for example, if it was, I don't know, like you were stuck in the work environment. Let's say you wanted to have a promotion, but for some reason you just couldn't elevate in your career path, whatever. And you think that the story is just about that. Is it
Hmm.
very common that people crack things open and recognize, oh, this is impacting like every area of my life where I'm maybe shortchanging myself?
Totally. Yes, 100%. I'm glad you brought that up because if a pattern is impacting one area of your life, I guarantee you, maybe it's not going to be super obvious to you, just by looking at I guarantee you it's impacting every single other aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Like it just is because it's energy. It's not like it's the same thing as when people say the way you do one thing is the way you do everything because that's just it's energy,
Yeah. No,
right?
that
It's going to
makes,
impact everything like the low self-worth. Yeah.
no, I was going to say that makes all the sense. I never heard that saying before. It makes all the
Oh, really?
sense.
I
Yeah.
thought it was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I have to ask you too, like once things start opening up for people, like even with you, when you started realizing here are my patterns and I'm starting to realize the motivation beneath what I want, do you sometimes then start to have new desires and goals surface that weren't even on the radar?
Such a good question. You get all of this. Yeah, you absolutely do because and that's actually why when someone comes in like to me and they're like, I want to manifest this. And I'm like, I don't really actually think that's necessarily what you do want to manifest. It's just your low self-worth saying, well, that's what other people want, so that's what I want too.
Uh,
But that's not really in your high. Actually, you would be way happier if, yeah, okay, you could have that, by the way, but actually, this is the path to get it, right? With the self-actualization path of you knowing your power and discovering your ability. All this stuff is over here. Whereas you're just looking at the thing that you want, the singular focus over here. And I need to get it this way and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, you're just going to be working up against yourself. Like,
right.
get out of your way, and then you'll start to be able to communicate with your higher self, which will then be able to start to guide you on the natural path of self actualization. By the way, which might include the thing that you say you want, but in a
Right.
totally different format, like in a totally different way that you just are not seeing because you just can't see yet.
So it sounds like it's probably a good idea to go on this with as least amount of attachment as possible. Just being open to the possibility that there may be
Open.
aspects of yourself you just don't know yet. And that's okay. Like, don't be so attached to a particular outcome, even though I think that's what people think when they think about manifesting, like, this is the goal, this is the end all be all, but it could be much bigger or much different than you initially think it might be. Could you
Totally.
actually share, because you can tell you're very passionate about this and clearly you
Oh,
have
okay, good.
applied it in your life. So, I mean, I know you told us about your story, but was there some moment or something in particular that happened where you were like, oh my goodness, this is it. This stuff really works. I get it now. Like, what made those light bulbs go off for you?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. So, I mean, there were a few of them, but the biggest one I will say, the biggest example would be this one where it was my wedding, which got postponed several times due to COVID. And then 2 weeks before my wedding, our venue canceled on us for really strange reasons. I was freaking out. I told my parents and my family, hey, like we need to find another venue. And usually most people would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, like whatever, whatever. They didn't respond that way. They were like, like one of my family members was like, well, just let us know ASAP because it's really inconvenient for us. And I'm just thinking to myself, hold on. Like what? Like that was a wake up moment for me because my initial reaction is like, yeah, of course. Okay. I'll let you know. And then I was like, wait a second. Hold on. Like, why is that the reaction that I expect from people? Like,
Right.
really, I have been operating from this like low place of such low self-worth that like I don't even deserve someone to go, hey, like, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Just let us know. Let me know if we can do whatever.
Right.
But that was the reaction to me. And it just like basically was an awakening moment of, oh my gosh, I just take on everyone's burdens. I just let people walk all over me. I'm just like a peacekeeper of the family. They don't really have the respect for me and it was really disappointing, obviously, and very heartbreaking in some way. But instead of doing what I usually do, which is just kind of like, okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then I just kind of go along and I just don't say anything. I really kind of stood up for myself and I actually just gave it to them back in a way that I never had before. I didn't even know how to do that with my family at the time. And it brought up a lot of guilt. It brought up a lot of shame in me. It brought up a lot of uncomfortable things in me. And it was so uncharacteristically Paget that it wasn't me. It was
Yeah.
a different version of me, but I felt compelled that I needed to do it. And after I did that and I processed out all of the shame, all the guilt, oh my gosh, I'm a bad daughter. I even said, hey, you don't need to come if you don't want to. I don't like need you to come if this is how you yada yada yada. I really gave it to them. Um, but actually, it was around that time that everything in me just started to shift. Like, that's actually when I ended up booking a random gig. Like, right after that, I ended up booking a random gig I didn't even actually audition for at the time. Shortly thereafter, that's when my Instagram actually blew up and
Wow.
that thing went viral. So I had actually posted it beforehand and then it just happened to go viral after that.
Yeah.
Very, very bizarre. I just felt this shift energetically within me that I wasn't the same person I was anymore. And I was like, oh my gosh, and people are reacting to me differently, and my environment's feeling different, and colors seem brighter, and my world just feels different. And that's when I realized, oh, wait, this whole like shifting your energy and shifting your reality is really real. Like the universe will only gift to you what you give yourself permission to gift to yourself. And in that moment of standing up for myself in a way I never had before with the people who I would obviously never want to do that with, um, I was basically gifting myself permission to speak how I felt and speak my truth and speak what I wanted and speak to my boundaries and all of those things, like all of it mixed and mashed up, right? In a very short period of time. And then the universe was just giving me basically that encouragement of like, yeah, keep moving forward, like keep stepping into your power.
Yeah. It's so interesting listening to you say this. It reminds me of, I don't know that I ever thought of this before, but that pairing of confidence with our worthiness. Because even hearing you say it, it feels like this air of confidence that just, comes up in even the way that you describe it. And, the importance of even recognizing what we're projecting at any given time. And of course, what is that going to be met with? What will be the response, not just from people, but from the universe? But I have to ask you this, because you were more concerned before about, maybe not being rude and all of these things. And now all of a sudden being able to say, listen, this is what it is, show up or not, and it's okay. Did you have to even do kind of like a little balance or dance with getting used to that? Did you
A
go to an
hundred percent.
extreme and did you have to
Uh,
reel back?
Such a good question. Such a good question. So many good questions, by the way. Absolutely. Like, so this is what I would call like leaning into your shadow self in order to come to some sort of an equilibrium,
Mhm.
right? So ask yourself, anyone who's listening, ask yourself, what are you the most scared of people thinking about you? Like, what are you trying to avoid, right? So for me, I was trying to avoid people not liking me. I was trying to avoid, persecution. I was trying to avoid criticism. I was trying to avoid backlash, because a family member had some interesting words back to me that I was avoiding hearing, but I had to hear it. She basically called me like a complete loser and all this
Oh,
stuff,
wow.
all these horrible things that like she had just like held inside of herself, right? Um, Apparently judging all of the years in which I was really lost. But
Mm,
she had never actually come out and said it, but she used that as an opportunity to just smite me. And I had and I didn't realize, but that whole time I was trying to avoid people saying those horrible things to me because that's how I deeply felt about myself during that period of time.
right.
But I saw it. I saw it. I had to face it. And but anyway, so that's another thing. But going back to what you said, yes, it is a recalibration and integration, by sometimes you have to go to this way on the other end of the spectrum, right? To fully be able to integrate that shadow or that fear you have about yourself so
Right.
that you come into a better equilibrium. So if you are super scared, let's say, of seeming really greedy, for instance, like that is how you operate. Like, I just don't want to seem like a greedy person. You actually probably a way to quicken your acceleration is to really seem extremely greedy for a little bit, right?
Yes.
Just lean into that fear, just go all the way with it. And then you'll find that it actually, you come back into a better recalibration with it because you now integrated that fear of being greedy, right? Because that fear of greed was actually what was controlling you and stopping you from fully stepping into saying what you wanted.
Right.
Now it integrates into you better. So you don't have to go all the way to the extreme, but now you can actually say what you want without feeling greedy.
That is so interesting. And it's, just even thinking about it, I think of how I have this habit of like, if there's something to buy for anyone else, like my mom, a friend, anyone, I don't even think twice about it. I'm not worried about like what it costs, anything. I'm just like, oh, I would love them to have the, but for myself, I'm always like, I don't need it. Like I'll talk myself out of anything for me. But if it's for someone else, no problem. And that's one of those things that always run in the background. I'm like, why do I do that? Like I have
Yeah.
to, like it's literally, I have to almost like click really quick and press purchase and like run away. Yeah. So you give me a lot to think about,
Yeah,
which,
good.
yeah, it's really, really interesting. But so I wanted to ask you about this too. Because I mean, well, you told us like a way that we can accelerate this for ourselves. But I imagine in that, like going deep into that shadow, there
Hmm.
must have been so much you learned that maybe
Oh
you weren't
yeah.
expecting. So were
Oh
there
yeah.
parts that you liked about that shadowy side? And were there parts where you're like, okay, this is what was that like?
Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. So, here's what I do say, that like when you're just trying to get out of the mud, most of us are in the mud.
Mhm.
So, when you're trying to get out of the mud, like a mud ditch, you ain't going to do it perfectly. You're not going to know every single perfect step. You're not going to, right? You're going to flounder. You're going to slip. You're going to be really, really messy about it.
Yeah.
Right. And then in retrospect, you're like, oh, I could have just done that path. Oh, well, I could have saved myself. Oh, but that's retrospect.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so that's why I encourage people to just get messy. Like, you ain't going to do it perfectly. You
Right.
are going to learn things in that process that you're like, whoa, I went way too far in that way. So I absolutely have gone way too far, but actually, strangely, I am way more proud of the times when I have gone way too far and I have said a little bit of an screw it,
Yeah.
right, to myself than the times when I went a little too soft.
Right.
Like, I would rather go to the end, cringe my way back into the middle than like not go far enough. Because I think it's actually, to me, it feels like a disease that most of us have, especially I think women, people who are empaths and stuff, like where we're so afraid of going too far.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, my whole life, I feel like I've been controlled by that fear of like, I'm just too much, going too far, I'm showing too much, I'm being too much, I'm annoying people too much. And I'm like, be too much for once then. Just
Right.
be too much. Like who's like, what are you actually scared of other than yourself? And why are you scared of yourself?
Right. Oh, I have to ask you this too, then, because you're just making my mind go pop, pop, pop. Because, this is in the reverse almost. A lot of times you'll see, because the way that we're talking is like, more on the meek side and coming more into the strength. But, sometimes there are people who they're more rigid and they're
Yes.
hard because
Yes.
they don't want
Totally.
to experience whatever it means to be soft, their idea of it. Is it
Absolutely.
harder for people to kind of surrender to the softness, or
Oh my gosh.
how does that
Yeah.
go?
Oh my God. It's a good question too, because this stuff is so layered, right? So,
Right,
man, because so let's say someone is hard, but they're hard because they had to be hard because really deep down they were way too quote soft,
right.
right? They didn't know how to manage the strength and the softness at the same time. So this is all so layered, and it's layered for me too, where there are times when it's like, okay, I need to go extra hard and I need to pull out that masculine energy in me in order for me to go extra hard. And then there have been times where I'm like, okay, you actually need to surrender into the softness. You need to
Yeah,
surrender. You need to let go. You need to surrender the control. You need to be willing to look weak again, right? So it's like a back and forth. It's a back and forth of like projecting sometimes maybe over strength or whatever you want to call it in order to shed a people pleasing thing. And then on the other side of it, being able to surrender into the weakness and the vulnerability or the feeling of vulnerability. Um, in order to come more into the receptive and the flow and the self love and the forgiveness aspect. So it
yeah,
really is just like a dance and a balance. But I will say for a lot of people who do have challenge, it's really about control, challenge like letting go of control and letting go of their mind. It is really hard. It is just as hard. It is just as right. It is just as like, oh my gosh, for them to be just a little softer or
right,
just surrender a little or just give in that one time. Just let them be right that one time. Just let them have it. And it's like they feel like their whole identity is dying, right? Because they've
right,
operated from that place of like hyper strength for so long. It literally feels like an aspect of them is dying, which is exactly how it's supposed to feel, right?
right.
It's supposed to feel like a death either way.
It's funny because even hearing you say it, one, it brings to mind the whole idea of, we need to have balance in all things and accepting our entire selves, the more nurturing and soft, as well as the strong, what, just acknowledging every aspect of our being and not putting any of it off the shelf. But
100%.
you just remind me too of the stigma, right? Because we have a lot of there's people have a lot of pride around the idea of being strong, but then there's the stigma that a lot of people have around being soft because there's so many like terrible associations we even have with the idea of being nurturing. Automatically we think that there's only bad that can come from that, there can only be hurt from that, there can only be you're a doormat from that, you can only be. But to your point, if you find that balance and are able to be in your strength and in your kindness at the same time, this is where the magic happens, right? So I want to ask you this because I don't want time to run out. You do have an Unlocking Codes of Abundance course coming up. So I want to know what inspired this and what people can really get from this program.
Yeah, sorry, my dog is barking.
Oh, no, you can't hear it.
So, okay. Yeah, so unlocking codes of abundance. So for me, abundance was my biggest block, let's say, for my whole entire life. For some reason, I was only able to make like 2K a month for a very long time. And I didn't understand why. It's not like, I'm capable, I'm able to do things, I'm kind of skillful in some things, right? And I'm like, what is this? So, on my path of, making that big shift in myself, like I talked about after my wedding, and then the universe reel went viral and I started to do this work and my intuition started. So all that stuff happened basically around the exact same time. Um, I was then hit with an opportunity to, okay, you can maybe make some more abundance, right? But I didn't realize that, okay, it's not just being given the opportunity, like energetically, you have to be ready for it.
Right.
Like you actually have to step into it. It's not just going to be gifted to you. Like you energetically have to step up to the plate. And so unlocking codes of abundance was literally all of the energetic, let's say, steps that I had to go through or the things that I had to learn in order to be able to be the kind of person who could create more money and then be able to scale it and then be able to maintain it and hold it. Cause sometimes I had this thing where, oh my gosh, I just made a lot of money really quickly. Oh my God. And then I was like, wait a second. How am I supposed to hold on to this? Right. And then I ran it like that fear of like, oh no, this is never going to last. Right. And so like there's so many parts of the journey of being able to create, maintain, hold, like increase abundance
Yeah.
that I just put in this one program. So I'm actually, it's like my baby because it really also just encompasses the whole human spiritual journey of being able to be energetically embodied in receiving money at a higher level. So it's 22 lessons, 22 frequency clearings where I help you energetically clear some of the blocks like the burden, the sacrifice, the struggle, um, scarcity, the fear of wealth, even like some of these other things, like 22 lessons and around those things and exercises. So it's a really immersive journey, and it's one where you're going to refer back to for the rest of your life because it's not just it is money, but it's also not just about money. You're going to learn so much about every other area of your life,
That's
honestly.
what I want to ask you. That's exactly what I was going to ask you because there are a lot of people who still, like if they're working on stories or whatever the reason may be, I think even before where you said some people are afraid of being greedy and that, that's their idea. So sometimes when you bring up abundance, it's almost like people want to dance around that could include money, that could include wealth. They're like, oh, but it could include love. Okay, great. But can you,
Yes.
like, yeah. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Like, do you ever come across where people need to understand like the gift of abundance and how being more open and receptive to it could really, again, help you flourish in other areas of your life?
Oh, totally. Yeah, because it's really just about it's all about again, like going back to the beginning of our conversation, all about the self-worth enough
Right.
and understanding your inherent value enough to go, you know what? I would like some more abundance. Okay, let me go out and create it. Right. And so actually you brought up such a good point about the greed thing. It's tied to the guilt thing, right? Where it's like I feel guilty because I seem too greedy. Guys, there are people out there making hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. They do
Billions
not seem,
nowadays.
yeah,
Yes.
right, exactly. And you're
Right.
not like, oh my God, they're super greedy. You're probably, in all honesty, be like, whoa, how are they doing that?
Right.
Like, that's pretty
Truly.
cool. Because what difference? It doesn't like, so here's the other thing there is no value judgment, actually. Like, to be quite honest, there's no value judgment if you are making 2K a month or if you are making 100K a month. There is
Right.
no value judgment on that. It's just, your own individual experience of life, right? None of this lasts forever. It doesn't really matter in the end, but is that something that you would like to do? Do you choose that experience? Okay, great. Well, guess what? You can actually have that experience, right?
Yeah.
It's really just a matter of that to me. And also another thing that I discovered actually while recording some of the frequency clearings is if you guys feel guilty of claiming more abundance for yourself, actually, it's not really doing anyone any favors. It's not actually. So let's say you're a coach or you run a business or whatever it is. Actually, when you can embody the frequency of deserving of what you want, you're actually giving permission at a deeper frequency level for anyone who's interacting with your business and anyone who's buying from you and anyone who's learning from you to do that for themselves.
Right.
So you are actually giving back to other people when you're able to claim your own deserving of the things that you want.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad that you said that because there are a lot of people in this realm that really struggle with that. And I did at first too. And I don't know, because I had no problem taking money when I was working in corporate. Like I felt like I deserved that check.
Oh yeah.
But I think because there was just such a story in the realm of spirituality around, there's a lot of story around that exchange and monetary.
Yes.
So yeah, there was a lot of work I had to do around that, but there are a lot of people that really do struggle with that. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up. But a big thing of what you've shared throughout this conversation, it feels like by doing this work, it helps us to really take ownership of our desired experiences. Like there's nothing wrong with wanting to enjoy different aspects of life, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to have more room and ability to do certain things that maybe now you just think are impossible. What if it's not? And I always tell people that too, like even on a small level, sometimes things that you think like, oh, it's impossible for me. I'm like, but you see 5,000 other people doing it. So why is it impossible
Exactly.
for you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly actually what I ask people too, right? It's like,
Yeah.
what? No, if it doesn't apply to everybody who's like in your age category, who's living in the same country as you, who's like, you know what I mean? In the
Yeah.
same, why does it need, it doesn't. So what
Right.
is that fundamental difference? That's the resistance
Yes.
that needs to be broken down. That's the resistance that that is your work right
Right.
there. And you can change it is the most important message, right?
And that's the part, right? So, yeah, I'm really glad we had this conversation,
Me
Paget. Okay,
too.
so I do want to make sure everyone knows this Unlocking Codes of Abundance course is going to take place on June 17th. Is it going to be something they can go back to access the recordings? Are there any live portions? Is it all online? What are the
Yeah,
details?
absolutely. So all of it is recorded except one bonus clearing that's going to be on June 10th. So if you miss it, you'll
Okay,
still have the recording of that though, and it's still powerful. And you get lifetime access to all of the material. And because I do want people to go back and use the lessons over and over again, like literally you can spend I know I'm doing it 22 lessons, 22 days, but really you can spend a whole week with each one of those things,
right.
each one of those lessons. So yeah, you have lifetime access to it.
Okay, that's perfect. So I will make sure to put the link for everyone. They can also go to your Instagram, first of all. I recommend they go to your Instagram anyway. One, they can hear your conversations with the universe, but you also put a lot of fun, just like food for thought, I guess you would say, like
Yes.
inspire a lot of thought. So your Instagram is at Paget KG, which I will put in the show description as well. And I think all the links for everything are in the bio on your Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
goodness gracious. So we're gonna do our work. Really, even now, even before the class gets here, you can start thinking about potential blocks, where you feel any resistance, limitation, what may be the reasoning behind there. And so once you get in the class and start the work, have that openness, just open to
Absolutely.
change and to seeing what's true. It can't
Exactly.
hurt.
The truth. That's what this
Yes,
awakening process is about. The truth.
yes.
That's all it's
Seeing what's
about.
true. Gosh, yeah, it sounds so easy, but that's one other thing I just want to point out as
Yeah.
well, because we kind of touched on a little bit. Yes, it can be uncomfortable sometimes to recognize what's true around the stories
Mhm.
that we hold or the why beneath the way we are experiencing life. But I
Absolutely.
think once you have that first moment of discomfort and recognize it didn't take
Totally.
you out, then
Totally.
you're like, okay, I can I can do this.
It almost took me out, but it
Right.
didn't totally take me
But it
out.
didn't
Okay.
totally take me out. Right. So now I could go through the rest of the haunted house. No, but
Exactly.
yeah, that's what it feels like. But anyway, Paget, thank you so, so much for coming to share with us today. Again, everyone, her Instagram is Paget Kagy, and that's Kagy.
Thank you so much, Yolanda.
Thank you, love. Okay, beautiful alchemist. First of all, I want to thank Paget KG for coming to share with us again today. I really enjoyed the conversation with her. And don't forget, you can follow Paget on Instagram at Paget KG, that's Kagy, or you can visit her website, thequantum.life. You can also learn more about her upcoming course, Unlocking Codes of Abundance, at abundanceclearings.com. However, there is a link that you can use to learn more about this event. It's down in the show description. So the class takes place on June 17th. However, there is like a pre course or pre-information that you can also join her with that starts on June 10th. So be sure to check her out. Thank you so much, Paget, for coming to have this conversation today. And also want to remind everyone in the community that you can join me on Tuesdays for Reiki chats. You can join me by downloading the app, the Energetic Alchemist app. It's available in the Apple App Store and also through Google Play. It is a free app. There's free content there, although there is a membership option where you get access to more. But you can join me for free conversations on Tuesdays, and the link is available there in the app. I think that's all that I have to share with you all. I'm looking forward to sharing more interviews with you that are upcoming. Currently doing recordings for the Reiki Rays Global Healing Summit. So that's exciting. That usually launches in the fall. So I'll keep you all posted about that. And yeah, I think that is all for now. Thank you so, so much for being here. Oh, and thank you for those who do rate the show and leave reviews. It means the world to me and it helps the podcast grow. So thank you so much for that. I will see you all very soon. Remember to always journey in love.